What's happening? What's happening? What's happening?
And we're back!
That's right, back again, finally, episode 11, JC's Pop Culture Podcast. Got a handful of movies to review, got some movie and TV show news to talk about, so back to get back at it. Of course, as always, spoilers ahead in this shit, so, if you don't want to be spoiled for the movies I'm going to review, Alien Romulus, Beetlejuice, Trapped, In a Violent Nature, and maybe Incoming as well, might throw that in there, a little Netflix original comedy I watched as well. If you don't want to be spoiled for any of those, warning right here, but I will try and put timestamps in the description on the video version here on YouTube, and then timestamps in the description, the show notes there on the audio side as well. So if there's one that you don't want to be spoiled for, but you want to catch some of the others, you can know what timestamps to go to. So let's do this shit, man. Let's get into it. Let's lead it off with Alien Romulus. Saw this one a while back, wanted to get to it, but as is the case once college football season starts, harder for me to put stuff out on this channel, trying to be better about it. But on my other channel, Country Roads Webcast, covering WVU football, it takes up a lot of my time in the fall, but still we'll try and get to this podcast as I see movies. And of course, I'll still have my movie rankings at the end of the year, my top 10 films of the year, my top most anticipated of 2025 as well. We'll have those coming here on podcast form as well here on JC's Pop Culture Pod. But we got a handful of movies to review since it's been a while since I've done this. And Alien Romulus was one of my favorites that I saw recently. So let's talk about it first. Spoilers ahead for Alien Romulus. All right, so Alien Romulus, Fede Alvarez writes and directs this. Get Kaylee Spaney, you get David Johnson, kind of the two main stars really in this film for me that I thought played the best roles. More on that momentarily, but just want to preface this shit by saying, I haven't ever really been huge into the Alien franchise. I think I'd seen, one of the Alien vs. Predator, I think the original one, and then before the movie came out, watched Alien and Aliens to get ready for this shit because I knew it took place like in between them. So I'd never even really watched those completely. I think I might have seen Alien before this once, but really not huge into the Alien franchise, but I really like the looks of this trailer and stuff. And I wanted to see this one and kind of let it be my entry point. So I had to watch Alien and Aliens first. But having said that, man, when I went and watched this shit in the theater, I was blown away. And it made me want to continue to watch more Alien stuff that I heard about afterwards. I've since watched Prometheus. I'm going to watch Alien Covenant soon and really get into the whole franchise itself. But right now, from the ones that I've seen, this was right up there with the best of those originals that I mentioned, Alien and Aliens, Alien Romulus. Super awesome effects, super awesome, the way that they did the face huggers. They felt even more scary than they ever have before. There were a ton of Easter eggs in there, some of which I didn't get, like I said, because I'm, didn't find out about them until afterwards because I'm not big in this Alien franchise. But some of them I definitely did get. And I'm a sucker for that. I know a lot of people, one of the complaints I've heard is them, reusing the line, get away from her, you bitch. But, they do that with the character David Johnson plays this movie. And to me, that gave me chills. I loved that part. And I loved all the nods to Alien and to Aliens. Of course, the big controversial thing coming out of this was the kind of ending. Like I said, spoilers ahead, guys. We'll get into it. When they do have the offspring is what they're calling it. It's kind of the alien human hybrid baby that turns into this giant humanoid like freaking I guess it's still a xenomorph, but it's a humanoid xenomorph in a lot of ways. They use, kind of the black goo that we previously seen in Prometheus, which I found more about after this movie, and ended up creating the crazy offspring, which to me was freaking crazy as hell. I love that. Was another one of my favorite parts. I thought that shit was freaky looking, man. Some people, thought it looked corny or whatever, but I loved it. I thought it was freaky looking. I thought it was a great ending to the movie and really gave me some of the best jump scares, like when they're out there floating in space and she pops up and he's right there, waiting on her at the ship. And when you think he's gone, that was a great jump scare. A lot of cool moments through this. You get the gravity scene. At the beginning of the film, you find out about the gravity going on and off on this ship that they're stuck on, and they use that to great effect there in one of the final scenes as well. They bring Ian Holm back from Alien. The actor has passed away, so it's like a CGI recreation of his face, kind of a digital recreation. They used a different actor and kind of just pasted his face above him. They do have his voice as well. They got permission from his estate, so that's a plus. But that was just one of the negative side of the effects, was the way that looked. But you can only expect that to look so good, I guess. Nonetheless, I like that they brought that character back and kind of tied these together well. So wasn't too upset about that. Like I know some people were, but to me, I thought it was a nice touch. Like I said, I liked all the Easter eggs they threw into this, and I thought they did a nice job of throwing in some stuff that kind of give you that sense of nostalgia. Like I said, even this is coming from me, someone that was never the biggest fan, but really got into it before the movies and watched Alien and Aliens like a week before. They really did some good fan service to that, but it felt organic within the story. And then it felt enough like its own thing, though. That's what made me love it that much more. Just the fact that it's kind of has its feet in both camps, but does both things very well, both being original and paying homage as well. So I thought that was a plus side for this movie. And, besides the one scene I mentioned, excellent effects. And Fede Alvarez, he's not never scared to go there. You get good gore, some crazy kill scenes in this one as well. I thought it was one of the more balls to the wall alien movies that I've seen. I guess I could say that's the way I'm going to explain that shit. Just because it felt kind of punk rock, but still with nods to the old school. So I absolutely love this, man. One of my favorite theater experiences of the year, if I'm being honest with you. It's got a chance of ranking high in my list. I think like I said earlier, I think it's up there as far as the alien movies are concerned. So for me, Alien Romulus, it's going to be a 9 out of 10, and I'm flirted with a 9.5, guys. I think I'm going to land on a 9 for now, but excellent movie. If you haven't watched Alien Romulus, watch this shit, man. I think you're going to love it. So that's what we got for Alien Romulus. Now let's talk about a more recent film that just came out, Beetlejuice. You guys know the original Beetlejuice, one of my favorite films ever. It's a classic. Did this one hold up to the first one? Was it a serviceable follow-up? They've been trying to get a follow-up to Beetlejuice off the ground for years. We finally get it here in 2024. Let's talk about it. All right, so Beetlejuice, the long anticipated, long rumored, they used to have the Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian rumors, a script that never got made. They've tried to do Beetlejuice sequels ever since the original back in the, was it late 80s? I think it was 80, was it 89 or was that in the 90s? I can't remember, but either way, trying to get a sequel to it for forever. Tim Burton finally gets one. And one of the things that really intrigued me about this was that two of the writers were Alfred Goh and Miles Millar, who, if you guys know, are Superman fans like myself and shit, you probably have seen Smallville. Those were the creators of Smallville. So them, working with Tim Burton on this, that intrigued me even more. Obviously, just a Beetlejuice sequel alone with Tim Burton would have had me bought in, especially with, the original cast members returning that we get here. Winona Ryder, Catherine O'Hara, Michael Keaton, of course, back as the titular Beetlejuice. And I think that all of those things really just led me to be like, okay, I'll check this out. You go into this sometimes, though, especially with these reboots, requels, whatever the hell you want to call them, that we get a lot nowadays. Sometimes they really miss the mark. We've had that happen in recent years. So wouldn't be lying if I said I was a little bit scared that it might do that, but I'll say I was pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed Beetlejuice. Kind of similar to the same things I thought about Alien Romulus. Good nods to the original, but also felt like it's complete own thing. My only real negative coming out of this movie, I thought, was I would have loved to have more Michael Keaton. That's the thing. I feel like you never get enough Beetlejuice, because the times that he's on there, Michael Keaton's just chewing the shit up out of the scenery. And you're loving every minute of it, all his zingers. And they did a couple of little nods in this movie that with his character that I'm wondering, it was kind of an interesting way to go about it. It was still funny. And to me, those parts were, he did, when he's telling the story, kind of his backstory, they do like this voiceover thing where he has like a Spanish accent, which, okay, that was funny enough. But then when they do the music scenes, it's, they redo like the Deo scene from the original here towards the end of this. And then there's another time where I think it was Right Here Waiting playing. And instead of having Michael Keaton look like he's singing it, it's just an obvious voiceover and, a song playing. So it's almost like they took away a chance for us to hear some more, funny Michael Keaton Beetlejuice lines with those moments. So those were kind of the only negative points for me. But all in all, man, they did a great job with how they handled this. And even though I felt that way about those scenes, I thought they were all still funny as shit. Michael Keaton on his A game yet again, coming back, stepping right back into the role. Definitely feels like a Tim Burton movie. Just has that feel to it for sure. And I think one of the best things about it that I enjoyed, though, is we're right now getting into the fall season. People like to watch movies that make it feel like fall. This movie had great fall atmosphere. Centers kind of around Halloween, and they do a great job with the set decorations, making it look and feel like you're in the fall, you're around the Halloween season. So it's going to be a great movie to watch around that time. And I can't wait now to watch Beetlejuice and Beetlejuice back to back and see kind of how they go together in a little double feature and shit, because I enjoyed Beetlejuice. Like I said, Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, Catherine O'Hara, Jenna Ortega joins the cast as why can't I think of the name? Lydia Dietz. Lydia Dietz's daughter, of course. Lydia played by Winona Ryder in the original, and she does a great job as well. Doesn't feel like a Wednesday, carbon copy. I think a lot of people were kind of afraid of that with how Lydia Dietz's character is, and then how Jenna Ortega played Wednesday. They thought it would kind of be like that, but no, they play it a little bit differently. She does a good job with playing Astrid Dietz. Obviously we know with what's going on with the backstory of the guy that played the father in the original, he wouldn't be included in this. Looked like they were going to kill him off. That's indeed what happens. And if you don't know that backstory, I'm not going to get into it here. You can Google it and shit. It's pretty fucking gnarly. But nonetheless, I was wondering what they would do about that, and they kind of, you know, throw some dirt on him, and I don't blame him for doing it. Obviously, when you know the backstory, they show him, getting in a plane crash, show him getting eaten by a shark, and there is a character that kind of plays him, a headless version of him, and someone does the voice. So I don't think that he probably got paid for this role, but you do see some appearances of that actor in like recreated images. So that was a little bit of a negative point if he got paid for it. You don't want that to happen with his backstory. But nonetheless, they definitely threw some dirt on him and some dirt on his name with some of the callback scenes to him when they were referencing his death and everything. So that's kind of how they dealt with that. Justin Theroux plays a funny character in this film. I thought that he was, hilarious when in kind of a predictable role, but he had some fun with it and did a good job. Monica Bellucci plays the Beetlejuice when he was in human form, a woman that he married that, poisoned him and is now out to get him. She's kind of, I guess, the other villain of the film, if you consider Beetlejuice a villain here. And then one of the, of course, Willem Dafoe's in there. You guys saw him in the trailers. He's a detective or an actor that thinks he's a detective there in the underworld. But one of the standout performances really comes from Arthur Conti playing the character of Jeremy. You see Jenna Ortega's character out riding her bike. She kind of wrecks, nearly hits a car in a scene that I think was a fake out to kind of try and make us think it was going to be, a car wreck or a death that leads this off, kind of much like the original Beetlejuice, where we had that with the Jenny Davis character and her husband, where they, have the car wreck off the bridge, and the twist is that they're dead. And they kind of think they wanted us to think that's what was going to happen to Jenna Ortega. But instead she wrecks her bike and, hits her head on a tree. And then that's when she meets Jeremy. And, I think it was either the second time they met or the first time she goes in the house. Can't remember how that sequence went, but I kind of picked up on the twist there that he was dead. And, I didn't realize if his whole family was dead or not. But of course, when I saw the book, that's when it really hit me. But I love the way that they threw a little bit of an extra twist in there. So it's just like, hey, you think you figured this out early because, he's dead and you did get that right. Well, guess what? We're going to put a little bit of twist on that as well, because that's the one that got me. Is I knew that he was probably dead, but I was not expecting him to be a murderer that was, playing a trick on her. They did a great job setting that up to where you thought it was going to be a little love interest, a rom-com side to the story anyways. And that was a great twist there, having him actually be a kid that murdered his parents there at that house. And love the way that progressed, and that little twist got me there. So, and he had a great performance there as well, playing both sides of that character, the lovey-dovey side at first, and then shifting into kind of the asshole trickster there that was a murderer of his parents. So this movie, a little bit dark at times. It does go there a little bit, and I do like that about it as well. It's got some cohenas to it. It's got some excellent comedy to it. So all in all, is it better than the original? No, of course not. Rarely ever are these movies better than their original counterparts, but this one right here is a damn good follow-up, and I think it's going to pair well with that original movie. Tells its own story, walks its own path, but does it in a similarly funny fashion to the first one, with enough of that horror and fall Halloween tinge to it to really be a great movie to watch every fall season, I think. So Beetlejuice, another one of my favorites thus far this year, I think, up to this point. I'm going to rank it pretty highly. I'm going to go with an 8.5 for Beetlejuice. Now let's talk about a couple of horror movies that I watched here recently as well. Like I said, getting into the fall season, it's going to be more of that time. We'll be talking about that more and more here on the channel. Obviously, that's a big fan of mine, is horror movies, comedy movies, superhero movies. Those are right up my alley. If they're up yours too, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you listen to this on the podcast side, be sure to follow me on whatever platform you're listening on. You can find it on Amazon, Apple, iHeartRadio, you name it. Just search there for JC's Pop Culture Pod. But leave me a rating if you would. That really helps a lot. Helps that get shared around more. Positive one if you'd like, 5 stars. I appreciate that shit. But let's talk some horror, man. Let's get into these movies right here, starting with In a Violent Nature. All right, so In a Violent Nature is one that I was kind of really anticipating, just because slashers definitely by far my favorite genre within horror, and this was kind of a different take on a slasher movie where you get this essentially Jason-esque kind of character stalking people through the woods, but the film was going to be told from, his perspective. And I thought it was going to be like first person POV. That's necessarily not the case. You're a little bit behind him, but you're still following, this killer the entire time and kind of learning through about the story through his eyes, which is really interestingly done. But I think that one thing I was wondering when we was going back and watching the trailers for this and shit was, how are they going to develop a story that way? Is this going to be kind of boring if we're just watching him walk around some? And at times, the answer to that, unfortunately, is yeah. Sometimes there's just a lot of fucking walking in this movie. It made me think of Clerks 2 when they're fucking clowning Lord of the Rings, and Randall's like, all this movie is walking. The next movie, I see him more walking. Even the fucking trees walked in those movies. That's kind of how I was feeling watching In a Violent Nature, because half of it is leaves rustling and footsteps. But nonetheless, some great kills in this movie. If gore's your thing, if you're a big time gore hound, you get that in spades with this movie. They did a great job with the effects and really went there on some of the kills. That yoga scene specifically, my goodness, that was fucking raunchy. So definitely goes there. Written and directed by Chris Nash. No big main stars in this one, has that independent feel to it. Rye Barrett plays Johnny. Andrea Pavlovic plays Chris. Reese Presley plays the Ranger. Cameron Love is Colt. Some of the names there in the top of the cast. But really, I think this one's supposed to be coming to Shudder soon. And if you haven't watched it, I would suggest it just because of how different that it is with, its perspective that it takes. And some of the kills are really cool. The story was just kind of hard for me to figure out what happened. I actually, had to watch and look it up afterwards. Like, so wait a minute, what's this guy's story? And it turns out he was like pushed off of a water tower, some shit like that. I can't even 100% remember, but it didn't really hook me that much. I know there's a sequel coming. Maybe I'll enjoy it more. And I didn't fucking get the ending one bit, the way that the girl gets away and she's just talking to a lady that's telling her this story. And I don't know if it just went over my head or what, but I did enjoy the movie for the aspects of, following the slasher around from a different perspective. Some of the kills were good. So all in all, it's kind of middle of the road for me thus far in 2024, but not a terrible movie. It's one I would still suggest checking out. So In a Violent Nature for me is going to land at a 6 out of 10. Next up, M. Night Shyamalan is back. But is he back to form, or is it another stinker from M. Night? There's been mixed reviews on that, I think. But we're talking about Trap, and even more than M. Night being back, we got Josh Hartnett back. So let's get into the shit. Let's talk a little bit about Trap. All right, so Trap, like I said, M. Night Shyamalan back at it, writing and directing this movie. And, one of the complaints I've heard, I think, is that a lot of people didn't realize this was going to focus so much on the concert. But I don't see how you can imagine that when you realize what the plot of the movie is, that they're at a concert. Obviously, they're going to have to be showing some of that concert. Or maybe it's just people upset that it's M. Night, had his daughter play the singer in the concert. She wrote a lot of the music. So people are wondering if it focuses too much on her because M. Night's trying to, get her career started or some shit like that. But I personally didn't feel that way. I've also heard some people downplaying, Josh Hartnett's performance, which I was a big Josh Hartnett fan in the 90s. Obviously, he was popping up in everything, The Faculty, Halloween H2O, that basketball movie O, there was a take on the Shakespeare book Othello. So I think that definitely, Josh Hartnett was somebody I was happy to see kind of having a career resurgence right now. He was on Black Mirror. He's been in some other things. The Bear, he's popped up in The Bear, and then now gets to feature and lead an M. Night Shyamalan movie in Trap. I don't think any of us would have had that on a 2024 bingo card a few years ago. So seeing Josh Hartnett back was cool, and I loved the way that he played this. I think a lot of people thought he was too over the top, being kind of the swell, all shucks dad in this movie. But for my personal opinion, I think that was a choice, and I thought that it was good. And he even had me laughing sometimes at the way he was playing it because he wanted to showcase the different sides of this character. And if you thought that that was corny, you still had to think that when he did showcase the other side, you get to see kind of some of the insanity come out from Josh Hartnett's character. He definitely played that well, in my opinion. I think it's hard to knock on that. Maybe I'm just a Josh Hartnett fan and was happy to see him back, so I ignored some of the negative parts that other people are seeing. But nonetheless, I really love the way that he played it. Having said that, I think I was wondering watching the trailers for this movie, because the big thing with M. Night is the twist, right? He's always got to have the twist ending since, the Sixth Sense and shit, which sometimes has come back to hurt him. But when they reveal in the trailer already, which, this is spoiler alert, but it's not, because if you saw the trailer, you already knew that what it is, the plot for the movie, if you don't know the reason it's called Trap, is because the FBI has set up a trap for a serial killer at this concert. They knew that he was going to the concert, so they're looking to trap a serial killer here. And Josh Hartnett, turns out, is that serial killer, but that was revealed in the trailer. So when I was seeing that, I was wondering, is M. Night just saying, hey, I'm done with the fucking twist shit. I'm just going to try and give y'all a movie. So here is, the twist. I'm going to give it to you in the trailer so going in not to really expect any big twists. And part of me was kind of cool about that, but then there kind of is still a twist. And just the way that this movie plays out, I'll say that's one of my negative points. Is a lot of it you really have to just suspend, disbelief, because a lot of the shit you're like, yeah, there's no way that would fucking happen. With some of the ways that Josh Hartnett's characters maneuver in throughout the movie, and then with some of the stuff that the end twist comes out and tries to present you, with the even to the end when the singer comes back to, the girl's house, and all of the shit that happens there in the third act's kind of bonkers, cuckoo, banana nuts. But that's another reason that I like it, is because it doesn't give a fuck. It's like, hey, this is the movie we're presenting, and we're just going to ride this out and give you an intense story that's still going to keep you on the edge of your seat, even though some of the shit may be kind of dumb. And so I really had a good time with it throughout, despite some of that, I think. And then, you get to the end, and you do find out there is still a little bit of a twist that M. Night tries to throw at you at the end. And that twist is that Josh Hartnett's wife had kind of figured out or guessed that maybe he was the serial killer. And she told the cops about his, secret place that she had followed him to, and left out that movie ticket for them to find, not the movie ticket, the concert ticket for them to find and shit, so that they could try and trap him there just in case maybe it was him. But really, she says she wanted it because she wanted to prove that she was wrong. She wanted to be wrong, that he wasn't this killer. So that's kind of the twist I threw at you at the end, is actually his wife had set all of this up to kind of capture him and everything. And then the end of the movie is interesting because they do finally get him, but he also shows that, he's picking his daughter's bike up at the end, which probably wouldn't let him do that. And he had pulled off, a wire or one of the bike spokes or whatever to break free of the cuffs there in the back seat of the police car, the ambulance, whenever he was in there. And the final scene is just kind of him giving this maniacal laughter to the camera. And you get this creepy look at Josh Hartnett I really did like the way that this was shot at times, with kind of the extreme close-ups on Josh Hartnett and some of the other characters. Kind of just gives it this eerie kind of feel. And I do like the ending of this movie, as nonsensical as it was. So great time for me here with M. Night's Trapped. I think, was it a great M. Night movie? No, it's not up there with Signs or The Sixth Sense or, any of the classics or anything like that. But I think for present day, modern day M. Night and the past few movies that he's made, this one's, up there for me out of those. I think it's a good enough time that I would watch it if you haven't. Not a great movie, but it's a fun movie. So for me, Trap's going to get a 6.5 out of 10. And then lastly, now that we've talked some horror, just got a little comedy that I want to talk about that I finally got a chance to watch on Netflix. I'd seen the trailer on there for a while and was like, I don't know, Netflix originals can be hit or miss. And was it great? No, but it does kind of harken back to some of my favorite comedies when they used to make good comedies, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And two of those comedies that it harkens back to, I think, are Superbad and American Pie. Kind of has vibes of both those in there. So I did get a good laugh out of the movie Incoming on Netflix. So let's talk a little bit about this shit now for our final review here on episode 11 of JC's Pop Culture Pod. All right, so Incoming, like I said, it's on Netflix right now, Netflix original comedy. And the good thing about this one, like I said, it kind of harkens you back to some of those 90s, early 2000 comedies that we don't really get anymore, those raunchy teenage comedies. And I'm just a sucker for that shit. So I was like, I got to check this one out. Is it as good as those, that we used to get back then? Not at all. Not some of the best acting throughout this movie at parts even, but really the lines, the jokes, they do hit on most of those. And there are some really funny situations in it that they get into. And when I saw the writing and directing team, which appears to be brothers, I believe, Dave and John Sheeran, they both directed and wrote this together. And I was like, man, what have these guys worked on? Because they had me laughing in this movie. I got to know. So when I looked them up, I was like, oh, that makes sense then, because they both have written on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and The Mick. And you do get the lady that plays Dee on It's Always Sunny in this, and she was, of course, the title character on The Mick. The actress's name is slipping me right now. Caitlin Olsen, man, I don't know why that went out of my mind so quick. Rob McElhaney's, real life counterpart. But she plays their mom in this movie. And this shit is pretty damn funny. You get the main characters, Mason Thames playing Benji, Ramon Reed playing Eddie, Rafael Alejandro playing Connor, and Thomas Barbuska playing Ruby, Bardia Siri playing Kushani, Isabel Fiera playing Bailey, So those are kind of some of the main players throughout this movie. And I thought that it was just really harking back to kind of like the American Pie vibes, because you get these four friends and they don't necessarily make a sex pact, but they're kind of like almost making this pact to try and be cool and reinvent themselves when high school starts, because that's why it's called Incoming, because it's four incoming high school freshmen. And it basically just kind of centers around this party that they go to kick off their freshman year. And a lot of hijinks ensue on that. And the fact of these high school kids going to this party, trying to get laid, trying to get drunk, high, all that stuff really reminds you of Superbad as well. So some funny moments ensue with all that in tow. And, not a lot to say. I don't want to spoil too much of the jokes in this because they are good, and I'd like for you to experience them yourself if you're into those type of movies, because there is a shit ton of funny shit going on, but also would harken you back to like a Can't Hardly Wait vibe. Like I said, those early 90s comedies and stuff, because it does have that guy trying to get the girl type of angle that we would get in a lot of those old school comedies as well. And I think that's played out pretty well between the characters of Benji and Bailey, which is his sister's friend in this movie. That's, pretty well done, but really just a lot of the hijinks that ensue with them getting to this party, with the other two friends that end up not going to the party, and kind of their side quests, which is even funnier than the main shit maybe. And I say shit literally, as they have to deal with some literal human shit in that scenario. So a lot of good jokes in this, kept me laughing. Like I said, is it the best movie? No. Is it as good as some of those classic comedies? Of course not. But the fact that it kind of just brought you back to that place where you could get comedies like this in the future, if it's making enough people laugh, if enough people are tuning into it, it can only mean good stuff in the future. So despite some not great acting, there are some really funny moments, especially from, a guy that is probably the most well-known actor in this movie, and that's Bobby Cannavale, playing one of the teachers in this film. And he is hilarious as that teacher. He shows up at the kids' party. He's a chemistry teacher, so he's like trying to teach them while he does drugs and drinks and shit with them, and just is absolute fucking party maniac. So having a teacher show up and party with the high school kids is a funny touch that I don't think I've ever seen in, one of those type of teen comedies. So just some different shit there that's really involved that will have you laughing. So I'd suggest checking out Incoming if you're a fan of comedies. For me, it's going to come out as a 6 out of 10 for the final movie that I want to review on episode 11 here. Touch on that comedy a little bit now. Let's wrap it up by talking about some movie and TV show news, and then we'll get up out of here for episode 11 of JC's Pop Culture Pod. All right, let's start out with some DCU news. We know that's kicking off soon with the animated feature Creature Commandos, and we're less than, almost half a year away from Superman, James Gunn's official live action start to the DCU. But we do know the Lanterns TV show is coming, and recently, since I've had the last chance to do an episode, we've had some cast rumored for Green Lantern. The main target appeared to be Josh Brolin. I also heard rumors of Matthew McConaughey, Ewan McGregor possibly for the role of Hal Jordan in that Lantern show, which will feature both Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. But Josh Brolin, according to Yahoo Entertainment via comingsoon.net here, Josh Brolin declines the Lantern role. DCU still searching for their Hal Jordan. Lantern series will have to find another Hal Jordan, as the Hollywood Reporter has reported that Josh Brolin turned down an opportunity to play the character in the series. Confirming rumors, the Hollywood Reporter noted that Brolin was being eyed to play Hal Jordan, one of the more well-known members of the Green Lantern comic series. Jordan is often used as the main Green Lantern in DC Comics and other properties. The report mentions that Brolin was actually offered the role in August, but turned it down for unknown reasons. No other information on who DC Studios will turn to is available, although the Hollywood Reporter did shoot down a rumor that Matthew McConaughey would be considered, so I guess that counts him out. Maybe the Ewan McGregor rumor is still in play. We'll see what happens. Of course, Lanterns coming soon, going to be a Max series, executive produced by Chris Mundy from True Detective, Damon Lindelof from Watchmen, and Tom King, who worked on the comic book Supergirl story there, Woman of Tomorrow, will be co-writing the series. Official straight-to-series order at HBO last June. The project has been confirmed to be 8 episodes, first announced back in January 2023. So still looking to see who will get cast here as Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan, but we know it won't be Josh Brolin. But as news breaks out in this Lantern series and the rest of the DCU, we'll continue to talk about it here on JC's Pop Culture. And of course, right in turn with that, we can talk about Creature Commandos, as we mentioned the DCU there, because we do know the premiere date when Creature Commandos is going to come out here to kickstart James Gunn's DCU, because a lot of the characters now, one thing we know about the animation series that DCU is producing and the movies and how they're going to all tie in together is that the same characters that voice these characters will play them when they show up in live action. All of it will be tied together down to that much. So Bloody Disgusting coming with this one here from DC Studios and Warner Brothers Animation. James Gunn's animated series Creature Commandos officially kicks off the new DC universe, and we have a premiere date, which will be December 5th on Max. The 7-episode Max original adult animated series, written and executive produced by James Gunn, will release one episode on a weekly basis until January 16th, 2025. Creature Commandos tracks a secret team of incarcerated monsters recruited for missions deemed too dangerous for humans. When all else fails, they're your last weapon. They're your last worst option, excuse me. The cast includes Sean Gunn as Weasel and G.I. Robot, Frank Grillo as Rick Flag Sr., Maria Balakalova as Princess Ilyana Rostovic, who we will see in Superman, Indira Varma as the Bride, Zoe Chow as Nina Mazursky, Alan Tudyk as Dr. Phosphorus, David Harbour as Eric Frankenstein, with Steve Agee reprising his role as John Economos from The Peacemaker. In the series, the Creature Commandos will work under the supervision of Amanda Waller, who was still played by Viola Davis. James Gunn wrote the series as well. So we got this coming December 5th, guys. We see some shots here from pictures that have been released, and we're pretty close now to the start of the DCU with the animated series Creature Commandos. And then how about some news from DC Elseworlds? Obviously, we know Matt Reeves' Batman project's going to exist on their own, but we're all patiently waiting the Batman sequel. I think Robert Pattinson's Batman, to me, probably the best Batman movie ever made. Definitely as far as accuracy to, the comic Batman that I've always wanted to see and kind of preferred. Loved the tone of that film. I've waxed poetic about it a lot, especially the way that they did Gotham, the way that it felt. Really just love that movie. So I'm super excited for the sequel. And we've been getting, little tidbits here and there about it. The Batman 2 will include Colin Farrell's Penguin, but will not include Gentleman Ghost because they never want to go into full fantastical, said Matt Reeves. This coming from Variety. He confirmed to FS Magazine that they're finishing up the script now for the Batman Part 2, and the plan is to shoot it next year. The sequel, starring Robert Pattinson, has been delayed, but is scheduled to release October 2nd, 2026. Colin Farrell will be part of the movie. We've shared the script as we've been going along with DC in the studio, and they're super excited. So we know that the Batman 2 is coming. We've also had it rumored that this movie may take place in the winter. If it does, I think that's an excellent choice. Does that mean we're going to maybe get Mr. Freeze? I don't know. But just think about with the atmosphere that they created in that first Robert Pattinson Batman film, Matt Reeves, the way that he dealt with the Gotham. Imagine him doing it in the winter, snowy Gotham. I know they've kind of already done this with Batman Returns, but obviously that movie was a lot of, sets and just kind of had that Tim Burton world feel to it, which when you think about this, it's more kind of on location shooting. Gotham feels like its own character. It's going to be more alive. And I'm just thinking about that Batman in the snow with the stuff that they did with him in the shadows in the first one and the way that they did the sound design with that theme when he's stepping out, all of that with the, snowy backdrop and that icy cold feel to Gotham. Oh man, it's got me super excited. So I hope the rumors of it taking place in winter are true as well. But there's a little bit of some Batman 2 news that will pull us out of the superhero realm. Then let's talk about a couple other stories here from Variety. Then we'll talk some horror news to wrap up this episode as far as the movie news is concerned here in episode 11. And one of these pieces from Variety is Ben Stiller returning to an acting role. We know he's kind of been out of the game for a while, been really only working on directing and done some good jobs, doing that type of thing, directing, producing and such. But he's decided to come back for a movie with David Gordon Green. Actually, it's titled Nutcrackers, Farm Animals, Untrained Actors, and David Gordon Green, Why Ben Stiller Returned to Acting. So it's going to be in this comedy titled Nutcrackers. Stiller had to be ready for anything when it came to making the low-budget indie about a workaholic real estate developer who becomes a guardian to his unruly nephews after their parents died. Then we get a quote from David Gordon Green about it here. When I called Ben, I said, I hope you don't have any allergies because there's every imaginable animal running around here, and bring old shoes because you're going to be stepping in shit. Nutcrackers will premiere this year at the Toronto International Film Festival, where it is looking to land a distribution deal. Offered both men a chance to do something looser and liberating. Green first hit the scene with art house films, but then, of course, talks about him working on Halloween and Exorcist Believer, which, the Halloween trilogy. I'm a fan of the first two films, but I know overall it wasn't well received, especially with the reception Halloween Ends got, which I'm not a fan of. Halloween Ends. Exorcist movies, not my cup of tea. Don't really watch them, so can't speak to that one. But Stiller hadn't started a film in 7 years in his own right, so both looking to kind of have a bounce back to what they do best, and that being comedy maybe. Instead, he's been focused on directing, making the miniseries Escaping Dan Mora and Severance, a workplace sci-fi thriller that electrified critics and audiences since it debuted in 2022. Stiller said, I never thought I'd take this much time away from acting. It wasn't intentional. It's just how things evolved. But production on the second season of Severance stalled during 2023 with the actors and writers strikes. Stiller found himself unexpectedly available. Because Nutcrackers was produced and financed outside the studio system, it received a waiver from the unions to shoot. This movie happened in a zone where it was literally the only time I could have made it a few months later, and I couldn't have done it. So worked out perfectly. We get to see Ben Stiller return to acting, which is something I'm super excited about. So whenever this does release wide, I'm going to have to check this out. See Ben Stiller back in a comedy movie. Sounds like it'll be a good time. David Gordon Green usually does good in the comedy realm as well. So I'll be checking out Nutcrackers, but did want to share a little bit about that news. Ben Stiller coming back, and hopefully it's for a funny one. And then the last little piece of news here I want to talk about from Variety is something that had been rumored for a while, and that there potentially being a Goonies sequel, which I had a lot of mixed feelings about. But when I did hear that maybe some of the original cast would return, I was like, maybe. But sounds like, the lukewarm response is probably not only from me, probably from others. But nonetheless, I think we can all, breathe now, because it sounds like it's not real. And as of now, Goonies sequel likely not happening. The Goonies 2 is not real, says cast member Martha Plimpton amid rumors. There's no script, no one attached, and Spielberg is not directing. So wherever this rumor came from that people have seen going around on social media, it's actually not true. No sequel to Goonies in development. So in this world where we're hoping to see, some classics remain classics and remain untouched, we've had to deal with them doing this for some films, and it hasn't worked out. And a lot of people have said, hey, you shouldn't have remade that movie. How many times have we said that? You can probably count them, on both hands and both feet at this point, because there's been so many. But nonetheless, I think there's some that we're hoping remain untouched. The Goonies, Back to the Future, can go down the list. Don't touch these movies. So I'm not too mad that it's not happening, but we'll see if that remains the case moving forward. But for now, just a rumor about Goonies 2. Now let's talk some horror movie and TV show news. Then let's get ready to wrap up episode 11 here. And I think one of the biggest pieces of news in the horror realm is from the TV side of things. Some series we're going to be getting. One of these coming soon here in November. We're going to have it this fall, and I'm super excited about it because I was a huge fan of Mark Duplass's Creep movies, both Creep 1 and Creep 2. Him and his friend making it on their own, kind of found footage style, just them and a camera, no crew, no nothing really. Just kind of hammer out the scripts with those two and just sit there and shoot some stuff. And man, it turned out phenomenally in both of those movies. Really well done. And we've been hearing about the Creep 3 for a long time. We've been wondering when it's coming. Well, instead of getting Creep 3, we're getting the Creep tapes. The Creep franchise returns with a Shudder series this November. This coming from Bloody Disgusting, as all few of these next articles are. It's Tubby time all over again with the Creep tapes, a brand new small screen expansion on the found footage horror franchise headed to Shudder this November, Shudder announced today it will debut the next installment of the Creep franchise with the upcoming all-new series, The Creep Tapes, from writers and executive producers Mark Duplass and Patrick Bryce. Yes, that's his name, Patrick Bryce. Couldn't remember there for a second. Mark Duplass will reprise his leading role in the 6-episode Shudder series that will premiere November 15th on Shudder and AMC+. The series will debut with a 2-episode premiere, followed by new episodes releasing weekly on Fridays on both platforms. This is what we know so far. The Creep Tapes continues to unravel the mind of a secluded serial killer who lures videographers into his world with the promise of a paid job documenting his life. Unfortunately, as the tape rolls, the killer's questionable intentions surface with his increasingly odd behavior, and the victims will learn that they may have made a deadly mistake. So same form as Creep and Creep 2 sounds like. Super excited to see how this turns out, especially in a series format. May even work better that way, honestly. So I'll definitely be tuning into this one this November. Maybe I'll do episode by episode recaps here on the channel if I can swing it. We'll see what happens, but we'll be talking about the Creep tapes when it comes out here in just a couple of months on JC's Pop Culture. And then the other series that I was talking about when I mentioned there was 2 is, you guys remember the classic film The Burbs? Corey Feldman, Tom Hanks, great cast there involved with that one. Love that movie. Readaptation of it. So kind of, what I was saying there about the Goonies. Hopefully this is one of those, ones that ends up on the good side rather than the bad side. But you do get Keke Palmer starring in it, who I am a fan of. She's going to star in the TV series adaptation of Joe Dante's 1989 classic. Joe Dante's dark comedy, The Burbs, is headed to the small screen with the TV series, and this one's going to be on Peacock, actually. Keke Palmer set to star in the series. Variety originally reporting The Burbs has been ordered straight to series by Peacock. Celeste Hewley, who did Palm Royal, Dead to Me, and High Fidelity, is adopting Dante's film for television. Here's a particularly cool bit from the website's report. The series will film on the Universal Studios backlot just like the movie. Oh, that is dope. That's a dope touch. So, despite the fact of sometimes you want classics to remain classics. I do like what we're getting out about this one thus far. Keke Palmer involved, filming on the backlot just like the original did. It's going to have that same type of feel to it. The show's official synopsis previews: set in present-day suburbia, the Burbs follows a young couple returning to the husband's childhood home. Their world is upended when new neighbors move in next door, bringing old secrets of the cul-de-sac to light, and new deadly threats shatter the illusion of their quiet little neighborhood. Seth MacFarlane's going to executive produce. That's interesting. So definitely seems like there will be some comedy involved, which the Burbs to me was always kind of a horror comedy anyway, so I'm not mad about that. Along with Brian Grazer of Imagine Entertainment, Keke Palmer starring and executive producing. So there's some news there for another series coming out, a remake of the Burbs in a Peacock series. We're going to get to check that out. So there we are. A couple more news stories here, and then we'll get ready to close it out, guys. And one of those stories is getting a release date on a movie that we're going to all get to watch this Halloween season. You know, one that we've all kind of probably been expecting a lot. The original Salem's Lot was good. I know it's a popular Stephen King story, so we were all kind of hoping to maybe see this be a theatrical release, but it's actually going to be released on Max. Not a terrible thing, you know, if you have Max, especially. Of course, I do. You know, doing this, I'll try and have as many of the streaming services as possible. So I'll be able to watch it, and hopefully plan to watch it sometime there in October. Like I said, coming through these Halloween months, I'm going to try and bring you guys a lot of horror content. So hopefully a review of Salem's Lot will factor in there, and it's going to be coming to us on October 3rd, 2024 there on Max. The trailer's out now. You can watch it. I didn't do a reaction for it, but I'll just say I can kind of see why maybe they decided to take this to streaming instead of a theatrical release. I don't know if this is going to be that great, guys, but hopefully it proves me wrong and surprises me and is a good take. Either way, new horror movie we can watch throughout the Halloween season. Either way you look at it. The long-awaited movie adaptation of Stephen King's Salem Lot from director Gary Dauberman is coming to Max on October 3rd. Stephen King recently tweeted praise for the film. Like that's worth anything. He's really praised some bad films in recent years. And this is coming from somebody like me that loved The Flash, but he hyped it up, you know, a little bit too much, even though I love that movie. I've seen on the new Salem's Lot, and it's quite good. Old school horror filmmaking, slow build, big payoff. Not sure why WB is holding it back. Not like it's embarrassing or anything. So that's when we were supposed to get the theatrical release, kept getting delayed, and now it's coming straight to Max. Salem's Lot 2024 is set circa 1975 when King's book was first published. So a period piece, at least we know that. Haunted by an incident from his childhood, author Ben Mears returns to his hometown of Jerusalem's Lot in search of inspiration for his next book, only to discover the town is being preyed upon by a bloodthirsty vampire and his loyal servant. The cast is Lewis Pullman, Mackenzie Lee, Alfre Woodard, Bill Camp, John Benjamin Hickey, Nicholas Cravetti, on and on. William Sadler's in here, though. That's good to see. Dauberman's creative team was listed here as well, as you can see on the screen. Not going to read through all these names, guys, but we'll see what happens. You know, the 1979 one directed by Tobe Hooper, obviously a classic. So hopefully this ends up being a decent film we can all watch here coming up on October 3rd. And then the final piece of news here is on a remake that I didn't even realize was coming, and that's House on Haunted Hill, guys. They're remaking House on Haunted Hill. Found this out over on Bloody Disgusting with an exclusive where they said that Daniel Roebuck, who, of course, good actor, is going to join the cast of the House on Haunted Hill remake. Another remake of William Castle's horror classic House on Haunted Hill is on the way. Bloody Disgusting has learned that Daniel Roebuck has signed on. Director Dustin Ferguson is in production now on the remake of the classic horror film House on Haunted Hill, which got its first remake back in 99. I'm a fan of the 99 film. Isn't the best, no, but I do get a great enjoyment out of watching House on Haunted Hill from 99 for some reason, the remake of the William Castle classic. Victoria Price, daughter of horror legend Vincent Price, is executive producing the new take, and she's going to star in the film. Principal photography is set to wrap up soon, so this will probably be coming sometime early next year, maybe, I'm guessing, or mid next year if they don't save it for the fall season. The House on Haunted Hill's remake script is set in 76, so another period piece, much like Salem's Lot that we just talked about, and follows a new team investigating the infamous Hill House on live television, only to face dire consequences. Brink Stevens from Slumber Party Massacres in here, Jennifer Moriarty from Spider Baby, August Kiss, C. Courtney Joyny, Eric Anthony Russo, Michael Wyatt, and the great-grandson of actress Julie Mitchum, the star of the original House on Haunted Hill. So Michael Wyatt is the great-grandson there. Interesting. Film's produced by Ferguson SoCal Studios, banners with producer Joseph Williamson and Mark Flemich. Julie Ann Realm from Unsolved Mysteries serves as associate producer. Of course, the original was released in 59. We talked about the remake in 99. And going to get another one, I'm guessing, probably in 2025. But we now know Daniel Roebuck's in the cast, and we know that it's wrapping up filming soon. So wanted to talk about that horror movie coming back as well. We got that remake on the way. And, some good horror movies to talk about in the near future on the channel. Terrifier 3 upcoming. Speak No Evil's out now. Hopefully I'll get a chance to watch that. So maybe those are some reviews you can expect to hear about in the next episode of JC's Pop Culture Podcast. For sure, got some good movies coming down the line that we're going to be talking about here on the future episode. Try and get it out to you guys as quickly as possible. Like I said, during college football season where I cover West Virginia on my other channel, another podcast, Country Roads Webcast. Sometimes it's harder to put content out here, but going to try and continue to do these reviews. I'm definitely going to be watching the 4:30 movie soon. You guys know that was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Being the huge Kevin Smith fan I am, a review for that will definitely be coming in the near future as well. But hope you guys enjoyed the movies that we reviewed on this one. Beetlejuice, Alien Romulus, Trap, In a Violent Nature, and Incoming, and then got to catch up on some movie and TV show news there as well. And that will always be the format going forward here on JC's Pop Culture Podcast. I've enjoyed creating episode 11 here. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed listening to it or watching it. Like I said, if you did watch it on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button before you head out. If you're a fan of comedy movies, if you're a fan of horror movies, and if you're a fan of the College Football 25 video game as well, as I put out content on that, be sure to subscribe here to the YouTube channel. And of course, the DCU as well. I'll be covering that extensively, being the big DC fan and big Superman fan that I am. So that's just something else that if it's up your alley, you should subscribe here to the channel. If you listen on the audio side, I appreciate that as well. Like I said, leave me a rating. That really helps a lot, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That will help me a ton. So really appreciate that, guys. It's been a fun one. Have another one coming up in the near future. We'll continue JC's Pop Culture Podcast. We'll have some movie reviews, spoiler reviews for movies, and we'll have some movie news and TV show news to talk about, just like we did on this episode. Really appreciate you guys tuning into this one, and I will catch you on the next one.